Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 396, Wednesday, April the 11th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, after a night's sleep and letting my mind work on the things that have gone down in the last 24 hours, I can say that I'm not quite as angry as I was yesterday. Was not in a very good mood yesterday, in case you didn't notice. I'm still not in a great mood, but I've calmed down a bit, had a chance to think about some things. So in today's video, I want to spend the first half of the video talking about what we can do. What can we do from this point forward? And I also have a couple news items I'll get to in the second half of the video. Let's not forget, today is Wednesday, and you know what happens on Wednesday. I take out the trash, and I have chicken. Every Wednesday, I take out the trash, and I have chicken. I've taken care of that, so let's get started. What can we do? Well, I think the very first thing I want to address here is the first place most people want to go, and I certainly understand it, and it is ethically warranted, it is morally warranted, probably legally warranted, but is it politically wise? Everything that we talk about here as far as these events that are playing out, even though we don't like to, we want to focus on what's legal, what's ethical, what's moral, but we're talking about Washington, D.C., and we're talking about the real world, and that means you have to figure in the political calculation. We have to. It's the reality of the situation. If there was no political considerations, I'd say, hell, fire Sessions, fire Mueller, fire Rodentstein, fire Wray, fire the entire Department of Justice, top tier, fire the entire Department of the FBI, top tier. I mean, let's just fire everybody. It would be warranted. Ethically and morally, I could support it. Politically, crazy. So let's talk about what we can actually do that would actually help. And I'm going to tell you right now, there is no great, fantastic solution. There isn't one. It's making lemonade out of lemons. That's what we have to do at this point. That's the reality, the political reality. But let's talk just for a minute about the firing of Mueller, Rodentstein, Sessions, and Wray. Well, the president can fire anybody in the executive branch, and that would include a special counsel. He could also order Rodentstein to fire Mueller. Now, Rodentstein would refuse. He would say, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I cannot do that, but I'm going to have to resign. Then he would resign. He would go out and make a statement. All the reporters would be there, and he would say, the president ordered me to fire the special counsel Mueller. I refused, and I resigned. Boom. Political shitstorm. Dead ahead. Political loser. Political loser. And what would that accomplish? Nothing. Because the Mueller investigation would continue. You would get a new Assistant Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, and he likely comes from the swamp as well. It would be the next man up. And what can Sessions do? Nothing. He recused himself. This individual would be taking Rodentstein's place. It would be his call. Now, Trump would, of course, be the one appointing him, but even if this person came in and tried to fire Mueller, again, it would be politically stupid. Now, he could rein him in, say, okay, Uncle Bob, come on in. I'm the new Deputy AG. I'm now in charge, taking over for Rodentstein. I want you to limit the scope of your investigation from this point forward to Trump, Russia, and Russia interference in the election. And that's all. That's every place that you can go. Anything outside of that is my business. So focus on that, and when you've done everything you can do and you figured all that out, let me know, and we'll have a press conference and tell everyone what we found. And then it's over. So that could be done, and that may even be a good idea. Fire Rodentstein, appoint a new deputy AG who would then be over Mueller, and tell him to rein Mueller in. That's one option. As far as firing Mueller, the problem with that, besides the political absolute, two things would occur. One thing might occur, and that is you might immediately have calls for impeachment. It would almost certainly lead to the Republicans losing control of the House in the fall, which means that Democrats would take over all the committees, all the current investigations would stop, unless there is a special counsel appointed to look into that by that point, which we're not sure there will be. Currently there is not. And that would lead to the very first thing Nancy Pelosi would do when she got the gavel back in her hand, was call for those impeachment hearings. They would likely have the impeachment process in the House. They would certainly have the Democrat votes, but they would likely go into the Senate. I think they would come up short in the Senate, so the president could be impeached, but that does not mean he would be removed from office. But it does mean his agenda is dead. Make America great again, say bye-bye. Probably say bye-bye to re-election. Probably see the Democrats win the next 2 or 3 elections. It's politically not wise. And another thing, a lot of people think that if you fire Mueller, that's the end of the investigation. No, it is not. I've said this 5 or 6 times now. You fire Mueller, whether it's Rodentstein or Trump, fire Mueller, the investigation continues. The investigation continues. My friends, this is something we're going to have to accept. This investigation isn't over until either A, Rodentstein says it's over and tells Bob to pack it in, or Mueller himself says, I've reached the end of my investigation, here are my findings. That is the only 2 ways this thing is going to end. Even if Congress impeaches, and they can impeach Wray, they can impeach Rodentstein. Probably, I don't know about Mueller, but certainly Wray and Rodentstein, that wouldn't end anything. The investigation continues. And the political fallout, disastrous. So this is really not a solution. It would make you feel good. It would make me feel good. It would make us all feel wonderful to fire Mueller. But the investigation would continue. And now they would have another thing to investigate. The firing of Mueller. You see? There's no end to it. It's not the solution. It would make us all feel good. Yes, the president has the legal authority to do it. It's politically suicidal. And you can't do it. I'm wanting to figure out what we can do to win. Not what we can do to feel good for a little while, because it would be short-lived. You might get 24 hours of enjoyment, and then it would all hit the fan, and you'd be really regretting that decision. So let's talk about another thing that a lot of people like to talk about. I've mentioned it myself, mostly in a humorous way, not totally serious. But this idea of a military tribunal. This is something that gets very, very confusing for a lot of people. So I went back and reviewed the Military Commissions Act of 2006. Now, in 2006, they updated and modified the Military Commissions Act, which has been around for a very, very long time. It's been upgraded 2 or 3 times, most recently in 2006, because of the 9/11 attacks. Because prior to that, it didn't really focus on terrorism or tactics of terrorists within the Military Commissions Act. But they needed that because they were going to have these military tribunals and send people to Gitmo and things like that. So they had to expand it to cover terrorists. Because prior to that, it dealt primarily with actions on the battlefield, things involved in wars and things and such. So just let me give you a quick, very quick, it's a fairly complex thing, but let me give you just the very quick story on Military Commissions Act of 2006 and the idea of a military tribunal. The military tribunal is for adjudication of war crimes and terrorism cases in military courts. It deals with offenses committed in the context of warfare, which would include pillaging, terrorism, killing civilians, taking hostages, using chemical or biological weapons, torture, mutilation or maiming, false flags, desecrating a dead body, hijacking a vessel or aircraft, aiding the enemy, perjury of any of the offenses above. So, as we can see, the military tribunal is primarily something that is used. It's handled by a military court, and it's primarily to deal with issues that occur during wars and conflicts, not during domestic political things. So while it's fun to talk about military tribunals, they really don't apply to the situation that we're dealing with here. So we can talk about the military tribunal, but in all reality, it's a fantasy. It's not a real option, and I want to talk about real options. So, let's talk about some things that we can do. There is one other thing that's a real long shot that I just made a note of. Congress can conduct their own investigations. They can also grant immunity to witnesses. The Congress, if they wanted to play this game, it would be very, very obvious what they're doing. I mean, it would be very obvious. It would also get very political. They could actually start calling witnesses and having investigations and calling witnesses and granting them immunities. Now, it doesn't always mean that that immunity will carry over into an actual criminal proceeding that might come from a prosecutor or something like that. But it complicates and makes the situation very sticky. It creates a lot of problems, you might say. So it's an option, but it's probably not someplace that the Congress is going to go, and I wouldn't put a lot of stock in that idea. It's just something I thought I'd throw out there because it is an option. But there is another option in that general line, which I'll get to in just a moment. And again, let's keep in mind that a lot of people think that when a president is impeached, he's automatically removed from office. That's not true. Clinton was impeached, was not removed from office. Trump could be impeached, but would not necessarily be removed from office. We don't want to go there, but just keep in mind that impeachment does not necessarily mean removed from office. You can be impeached and not be removed from office. We don't want to see him impeached, obviously. But even if he was, doesn't mean he would be removed from office. And as long as Republicans keep a majority in the Senate, it likely would not happen. So what is the best thing for us to do? Well, when I say us, there's really three people involved here. There is the president, there is the Congress, and there is you and I. So what could Trump do? Well, to be honest with you, when you look at the politics of it, sadly, the best thing for Trump to do would be to go ahead and continue on with his agenda, to continue moving his agenda forward, and to continue tweeting about and talking about all the good things that he's doing, to continue trying to find a way to get that wall, to pay for it, to get it done, to continue trying to find a way to reduce some of that spending in that massive bill he just signed. And there's some angles that they're working on now to do that, to continue to do everything he can to stop illegals from coming across the border and make sure people know what he's doing, to continue to stand up to China and others who are cheating on trade, because we'll win that fight, and it will be obvious by the midterms that we have won that fight. China will back down. When, I don't know, but they will. It's simple math. But this would be the best thing for Trump to do, would be to continue to go forward and allow his attorneys, and I realize it's hard now, one of his primary lawyers has just been come under attack, and this was no accident. This is also something else that Mueller is doing, is to create a chilling effect, is to make sure that Trump cannot find a good lawyer, because who wants to become Trump's lawyer when you know for sure as soon as you do, you come under the into the target of Uncle Bob and the Hillary donor posse. You place a big target right on your forehead when you go to work for Trump right now. It's a chilling effect. That's exactly what is probably one of the worst things about raiding Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer, because now anyone else who might want to represent Trump might think twice. Do they want to end up like Cohen? No, they don't. And Mueller understands exactly what he did and what that effect has. That's another reason it was so disgusting and despicable. But the best thing that Trump can do is to move forward with his agenda and to work on getting Republicans elected in 2018 so that we hold on to the House. That's how we keep the investigations going. That's how we keep the Democrats at bay. That's how we keep impeachment at bay. And the fact is, as far as Mueller is concerned, I think that move he pulled yesterday actually hurts him. And the longer he goes on, I think the more damage he does to himself. The fact is, Mueller's investigation won't be over until he says it's over, or until Rodentstein says it's over. That's a fact of reality, my friends. That's just it. So if you let Mueller continue on his witch hunt, and it's sad, it's very, very sad. But if you let it continue, I think it makes him look worse and worse and worse. Eventually, he just looks like a bully and a thug. And if all the while Trump is accomplishing great things and people realize, Trump's doing a really good job. Who's this asshole Mueller? Is he still doing his thing? And who is he going after now? Eventually, it's going to blow back on Mueller and Rodentstein, and they are going to look very bad, and Sessions is going to look very weak. This requires a little faith. It certainly does. But this is honestly the best thing that Trump can do. Sadly. And hopefully he'll get good enough legal representation that they will tell him that he should never speak to Mueller in any way, shape, or form. His attorneys can talk to Mueller, but Trump should never speak to Mueller at all. He should go all the way to the Supreme Court if he has to. Many good legal minds agree on that point. He should never talk to Mueller. That's one thing he also can do, is never talk to Mueller. Keep going with his agenda and tell Mueller to take a hike and hopefully secure good legal representation. He's going to need it because Mueller's coming for his head. No question about it. But Mueller continues to make himself look very bad in the process. And it will only get worse for him. Now, what can we do? Well, the best thing that we can do is continue to support the president. That's the best thing we can do. And there's ways to do that. One of those ways is we're doing it right now. Another thing you can do is, they have a hotline at the White House. You can call and tell them what you think. You can call and talk to a person by dialing 202-456-1414. That is 202-456-1414. Or you can call, if you don't want to talk to someone, the White House switchboard, you can just call the comment line in D.C. And that number is 202-456-1111. Again, that number at the comments line is 202-456-1111. And you can just call up and say, hey, I think this whole Mueller thing is a sham. He needs to stop. We've had enough of it. I support the president. Tell Mueller to go home and pack it in. Or whatever you want to say. You can do that. You can talk to your friends. You can motivate people at election time to get out and vote. It's very, very important. You can find a good candidate who's running in your congressional race and do everything you can to help that candidate. Hopefully, you're not supporting any rhinos. If you can support a good, honest person from your community to upset a rhino, that would be even better. So there's things you can do. The most important thing is keep supporting the president and keep active on social media in every way you can to do everything you can to let people know what a thug Mueller is and why he's doing harm to the country in his effort to take out Trump, or anything else you want to tell people. That's very important. Let's talk about what Congress can do. Now, they have a lot of things they can do. They surely do, if they have the courage to act. And let's not forget, I haven't forgotten again, a lot of what we're talking about now is predicated on what happens after the IG report comes out. Does the IG report come out and we see that it's a big cover-up job and that they're only going to say, well, there was some bad conduct and some misconduct, some things that shouldn't have been done that were done, and yeah, there needs to be some disciplinary action or whatever. If we get that, we know it's a cover-up and it's bullshit, and then we should burn up the phone lines. You know, you can also call your local congressman, as I did about a week ago. I was upset that I was not seeing my congressman out there defending Trump. So I called up his office and said, yeah, I'm just, I don't see my representative here. I don't see him out defending the president. I see a lot of other people. I see Jim Jordan in the district north of me. I see other people defending him, Mr. Shabbat over here in the 2nd district. But I don't see my congressman out there defending the president. And if I don't see him out there defending the president here pretty soon, come November, I'm going to find someone else to vote for. My congressman's name is Davidson. He just got elected 2 years ago. He replaced Boehner. So that's the call I made. And I'll be calling that comments line probably within the next day or two just to vent. But here's so we'll be watching the IG report. And again, if after the IG report comes out and shortly thereafter we start seeing indictments of the real crimes, then we can breathe a little easier, and that alone will put a tremendous amount of pressure on Mueller. It will take Mueller off the front page and put him on the back page. It will shift the focus completely as the situation completely flips, the narrative completely flips. Now everybody will be focused on the real criminal indictments of Comey, Lynch, and others. And that's what we should be thinking about, how things are going to work out. But if it turns out that the IG report is just a big cover-up, then we're going to have to take another track. And we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. In the meantime, Congress, right now, what we really need, I can say it in one word. One word. Offense. I said this about 3 or 4 months ago. I'm going to say it again. We need offense. We're constantly on the defense. And Congress has the ability to go on offense. I mean, they're looking into the uranium one, right? Why don't they start hearings? Now, if this was me, and I'm Jim Jordan, or I'm some of these guys sitting around and say, hey, you know what? We got some real questions about uranium one. Why don't we have open hearings about uranium one? And the very first 2 people we'll call in these open hearings, because they're up to their eyeballs in it, is Mueller and Rodentstein. Let's drag Mueller and Rodentstein in here in front of the C-SPAN cameras, and let's ask them some real tough questions. So, in other words, you can begin to launch direct attacks onto Rodentstein and Mueller and start bringing into question their credibility. Make them nervous. Make them wiggle a little bit. Even though Congress could not really prosecute and they would have to refer it to the DOJ, which would not happen, of course, they could still, I mean, it's a ballsy move, and it will be obvious exactly what it is. It will be a political move. But you know what? Having those guys on camera, having to sweat it out, trying to explain the rotten and borderline criminal things that they did in the Uranium One deal would be a way of going on offense. It would be nasty. But you know what? They're getting nasty with us. It's time to get nasty back. Open hearings on Uranium One. First 2 witnesses, Rodentstein and Mueller. Here's something else. We could have a national campaign, a call-in campaign, a write-in campaign, a Twitter campaign, a Facebook campaign. It could cover the entire spectrum of media. It could be a petition on the White House website. And we should demand and can demand these FBI and DOJ officials to all take an MRI lie detector tests. I don't know if some of you are familiar with the MRI lie detector, but it has been tested and tested and tested. And it has been found to be 99% 99.1% accurate, 99.1% on the MRI lie detector. We could have a national campaign to promote this, and if we could get enough signatures on the White House petition, they would have to address it. They would have to address it. MRI lie detectors for the entire senior leadership of the FBI and the DOJ, and the CIA, for that matter. Force them to take the MRI lie detector by public pressure. Remember, we really have the power if we ever just decide to use it. Here's another thing that Congress could do. It's a ballsy move, but they can do it. Cut off funding to the DOJ and the FBI. They certainly can do it. The chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee is the guy who directs the payments to be made to the FBI and the DOJ. And there's one man who makes that happen. And that one man can be told by Congress with a simple majority vote in the House of Representatives, stop funding the DOJ and the FBI. You stop funding them for about 24 hours, they'll act straight, they'll straighten up and act right. It's a ballsy move. Again, this is the type of tactics that we need to use. You could hold them into contempt. It's really a two-step process of impeachment. First, you hold them in contempt. This would be Wray and Rodentstein for not complying with the responsibilities of their office, which is to provide the documents requested by Congress for oversight. They've been stonewalling, cock-blocking, doing everything they can. If you've really reached your point, Mr. Nunes, Mr. Grassley, and Mr. Goodlatte, tomorrow you should hold them in contempt. And then, after waiting, I forget what the waiting time is, 10 to 14 days, something like that, go ahead and have the impeachment hearings. Impeach Rodentstein and Wray. And if the next two guys up don't comply, impeach them too. These are things, powers that the Congress has. Tools that they are not using. The situation is desperate. I suggest they start playing hardball. That's what's being played against them. They're breaking out plastic knives in a gunfight. It's time to break out the fully auto with the light anti-tank weapon attachment as well. Here's another thing that they could do. Here's another thing that they could do. We all know that many members of Congress, particularly in the Freedom Caucus, Mr. Gates, Mr. Jordan, Mr. Meadows, and others, have talked about the fact that Rodentstein should resign and Mueller should resign because of their massive conflict of interest. Well, you know, Congress can have hearings on anything they like. Anything they like, as long as it's something that their committee deals with. I'm not sure which committee would deal with this particular thing, but it's probably Gowdy's committee, oversight, and there might be another couple other committees as well. But they could have open hearings. Again, open hearings for the public to see on issues of conflict of interest with Mueller and Rodentstein. They're involved in a lot of things. Rodentstein signed at least one, maybe two FISA warrants. He's the one who appointed Mueller. Mueller is up to his eyeballs with conflicts of interest as well. We know that Rosenstein's wife represented the Right Reverend Clinton. Mueller has represented the Clintons and Obama and others. Both these guys have massive conflicts of interest. Congress could announce that they're having hearings to deal with the issue of conflicts of interest within the Justice Department and the special counsel. And they could call Mueller as well as Rodentstein in for some public hearings on conflicts of interest. In other words, what they need to do is they need to shine the spotlight on Mueller and Rodentstein, and even to some degree, Wray. They need to start focusing on them. They need to point the target on them. They need to start questioning them. They want to be the subjects of an investigation? I'm sure they don't. But you can certainly do it. Members of Congress have this power to do this if they want to play. This is hardball, and it's obviously political. But you know what? What's going on the other side is too. And this is, I mean, they want to play that way. This is the way that you got to play back. This is what you do. You have some public hearings. But the most important thing we can do to change the narrative, like I said, is to start having prosecutions and to start having a real airing out of the real crimes that really did occur. This is really what will push Mueller onto the back page, push his investigation onto the back page, and it will highlight the activities that both he and Rodentstein have been involved in. Rodentstein might be forced to, Rodentstein could be named because he did sign off on one or two of those FISA warrants. He has been involved in this stuff. So he could find himself being forced to resign after the IG report comes out showing his complicity in the illegal FISA warrant. So I'm saying that we have to find ways to shift the pressure, put the pressure on them. And again, the best way is offense. We need to go on offense in a big way. Big offense. I would sure like to know the name of the judge who signed off on the warrant to raid Michael Cohen. So far, I did a little search on that, was not able to find that. But I bet there's some journalists right now digging away on that one. Pretty soon, probably in the next week or two, we're going to find out who the judge was that signed off on that warrant to raid Michael Cohen. How many of you think that when we get the name of that judge, that we're going to find that he's very closely associated with the Clintons, Uncle Bob, James Comey, Loretta Lynch, and the whole crew? I think that's what we're going to find. Just a guess, just a wild guess. I didn't get a chance to listen to all of the Mark Zuckerberg hearings today because I work in an office in a warehouse and I'm in and out. I'm in my office for 5 minutes. I'm in the warehouse for 15. I'm back in my office, back in the warehouse all day long, in and out, in and out. We had the radio on. But there was one thing that I did get to hear this afternoon. It was the funniest thing I heard. Of course, Ted Cruz really did get after him about targeting conservatives and things and such. And now I was glad to hear somebody take that line of questioning with Zuckerberg, asking him about what they're doing to conservatives on Facebook. And he basically said that, well, that's something we want to clean up. We really don't want to be a political police, and we don't want to do this and do that. Unfortunately, where we're located, there's a lot of left-wingers and stuff like that. But I'm going to make it my mission in the next period coming up to try to eradicate that and get rid of that. We don't want to be picking on one side versus the other, and I don't like that when that's happening. Blah 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 blah. So he kind of gave us the talk, but I don't know if he really believes that. But that's what he told Ted Cruz. But the funniest thing I heard was at a point when they were, I don't know who it was asking the question, but it was pretty funny. Everyone's been talking about the fact that Facebook is getting all this personal information. What hotel you stay in, where you live, who your friends are, what you do. They were even trying to get access to your medical records and things and such. Really, really grievous acts of violating your personal privacy. So there was a congressman, I don't know who it was, a senator, because this was the Senate hearings. Tomorrow is the House hearings. And the senator started asking him all these personal questions, started asking Zuckerberg all these personal questions like, so, you're giving away all this private information, personal information people think's private and is not being shared, but you're digging into all of it. So let me just ask you some personal questions, Mr. Zuckerberg, and see how you like it all being shared with everyone. So where do you live? What's your address? What hotel did you stay in last night? What did you have for dinner? Did you go any shopping? What did you, and when all these personal questions, and Zuckerberg even himself started laughing because he realized how ridiculously silly he looks and how contemptibly corrupt he looked, just having to answer those questions. And he realized how it feels because he didn't want to disclose any of that personal information with all the cameras watching. And he realized for a moment exactly what is going down. So that was very well done by that senator, whoever he was. Tomorrow, I've got some very interesting news about what Jay Sekulow has learned from the documents he received yesterday from his FOIA request. We'll talk about that tomorrow and some more things on TowerGate.